speech length 6 to 8 minutes. And this is from the Storytelling or Advanced Manual, program number 4. Winston is going to share a true story about the friendship between a man and a gorilla. Damien Aspinall, I don't know if I pronounced that right, is a zookeeper who was raised on a private animal sanctuary with tigers and gorillas freely coming in and out of his home. He has dedicated his life to rehabilitating endangered species and releasing them back into the wild. This is the story of Damien and Queeby the gorilla. Please help me welcome Winston Siemens.
I'd like to welcome all of you, invite all of you to join me on a journey. Imagine this. You're deep in the African jungle. You're on a tiny boat with 3 men. You're motoring up the river, and the water is a dark, murky green. The vegetation of the jungle grows right down to the water's edge. And you're at the front of the boat, calling out for Queeby. Come on, Queeby. Come on, Queeby. Now, Queeby is a lowland African gorilla who was born in captivity. And his mother didn't know how to take care of him properly. And so you raised him. You took him into your own home and hand-raised Queeby for 5 years. Then you released him back into this protected jungle. And for the first time in 5 years, you've returned to check on your old friend. There's a part of you that's excited. You can't wait to just throw your arms around Queeby and embrace him and romp and play like you used to. And there's a part of you that knows that you have to be very, very careful. You see, something has changed. And Queeby has attacked the last 2 humans that he's come in contact with. You don't know how he's going to respond to you. Will he remember the way you bottle fed him as a little baby gorilla? How you used to romp and play until he would get so tuckered out, he would lay his hairy little head on your shoulder and just pass out in your arms? Or will he remember how you brought him to this wild African jungle and you left him behind? Could this, just could this, be the reason he has been attacking humans? There's a Toastmaster. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. This is a true story about a zookeeper in England named Damien Aspinall. He raised Queeby, this little gorilla, and he released him back into this protected jungle in Africa. And for the first time, he's come back to check up on him. And he's at the front of the boat. And the men are motoring up and down this narrow river. He's calling out for Queeby. And this is the face that they're looking for. Excited? And this continued for a few hours until finally a male gorilla came out of the jungle, and immediately Damien recognized him. It was Queeby. And as the men stepped ashore, Damien gave his final instructions to the men. If anything were to go wrong, if for any reason Queeby were to attack Damien, the men were to throw a pile of delicious food a little ways away. And maybe, just maybe, Queeby would lose interest in attacking Damien long enough for Damien to quickly get away to the safety of the boat. And armed with nothing more than this plan. Quibi, or Damien, slowly but confidently walked up to Quibi. And this is what happened next. As Damien walked up to Quibi, they both sat face to face. And Damien reached down and he picked up a leaf and he pretended to chew it. And then he passed it to Quibi as an intimate gorilla gesture. And that's when he heard the sound. It's what Damien calls a deep gorilla love gurgle. It's the gurgle of love. And once he heard this sound, he knew that he was safe. And he and Quibi just spent the most amazing, beautiful time getting reacquainted. And at a certain point, Quibi decided to introduce his family to Damien. And when he made the call, Quibi's wives and his offspring came out of the jungle, and they all sat together like this was the most natural thing in the world. Even though this was the most amazing, heartwarming, and beautiful reunion, it couldn't last forever, because Damien had to go back home. And this is what happened next. When Quibi sensed that he was about to lose his old friend again, he wrapped his arms around Damien in a tight but loving embrace, and he wouldn't let go. And he wouldn't let go. And he wouldn't let go. But Damien had to go. And so the men used Quibi's biggest weakness against him. And they laid a pile of the biggest, juiciest, sweetest berries that Quibi had ever laid eyes on. But Quibi resisted for a little while. And when he couldn't resist anymore, Damien quickly made it back to the boat. And the men headed back down the river to the camp. But Quibi was not about to give up on his old friend this easily. And Quibi followed the boat along the riverbank for miles and miles, all the way back to the camp. But the camp was on the opposite side of the river. Quibi couldn't swim. So Quibi sat on the riverbank, and for the entire evening, he called out for Damien to come join him. And in the morning, Damien came down to the river to take a swim. And Quibi came down to the water and lovingly watched his friend in the water. Of course, the time came where Damien had to say goodbye again, and this time for the very last time. You see, not every story has a happy ending. And in this protected jungle, there are people who monitor the animals who are released back into the wild. And Quibi has been missing for several years. He's not expected to be found alive. And his family, his entire family, was destroyed by a large silverback gorilla. Now, Quibi has left us, but Quibi has left us with a beautiful example of how man and beast can indeed share a profound and loving connection. Mr. Toastmaster.